Hi guys, welcome along and thanks for watching this another edition of our Market Watch. In this video I'm going to be covering a very specific group of markets, and those markets all belong to the one sector. That sector is metals. June we've just went into a very interesting month for the metals sector specifically, and I'm going to focus on a few of those where we can see really strong seasonal patterns, and also the commitment to traders data is also starting to look very bullish in those markets. I'm going to start here in our heat map. Scroll down till we get to the map itself, and I'm going to start when I look here obviously in June, going into June, and if we just highlight from copper down to silver. Now initially look at this, you're not going to be thinking, oh, doesn't look particularly bullish. They are majority of them in the red actually, which suggests actually they're negative through June. But what's of interest, if we move across here into July, you see a lot of field of green. July is a very, very strong month, typically for the metals sector, and that's why we're of interest now as we're in June, because what we actually typically see is the lows made around mid to latter half of June, and the rally begins in June as we run through into that seasonal movement through July. So rather than waiting to actually catch that seasonal strength in July, we're going to be looking to try and catch the bottoms of these markets now through the middle of June ideally. Drilling down a little bit more detail, take a look at the actual seasonal graphs themselves. You'll see straight away here copper is the first one on the list, and you'll see copper this that has been underperforming. We've seen the copper weakness. Generally what we've seen across all of the metals actually over the last few months, along with their seasonal pattern, is we've seen the weakness, and as we head into June is a very clear pattern in both the weighted average and the long-term average of copper, which suggests it's continuing to follow its historical patterns, is for that low to be made around the mid to latter part of June, and in a strong rally in towards later in July. Generally actually, as you'll see, we're making a low for the year in here, and we actually start to trend a lot higher towards the end of the year. Gold similar. We do tend to have make a little bit of a low in June, although the main bulk of its rally doesn't typically come until later in the year, but it would be nice possibly to make a low in June and make a higher low towards the end of July, so that'd be a nice area as well. Palladium, again, another market that typically makes a low late in June for a rally later on. It's not specifically on my watch list at the moment, because it's a market that's massively outperformed, and I think there's with the relevant with other markets like silver and copper and platinum being undervalued, I think they're likely to attract more buyers considering whether the level that palladium's already in. So not going to be looking at palladium. Platinum as another market, again another low as we head towards the end of June for a bit of a rally. You'll see here the seasonal pattern, the seasonal strength isn't quite as strong as we see in a few of the other markets, so maybe not at the top of the list, but it is something I'm looking at. And the one of the main ones I'm going to be looking at now when we get to the charts is silver. Again, a nice low towards the end of June for a strong performance through July, and we know silver has been underperforming, and we've seen a strong downtrend pretty much since the end of the main seasonal bullish period in end of February. Actually, we've seen silver underperform and drift lower, but it's this, as we approach this period now, it's starting to get a lot more interesting for us. I'm going to quickly look at the COT data just to add some weight to what we're actually seeing here. As we're heading into those lows, you're going to be expecting, what you'd expect to see is commercial buying coming into these markets, trying to protect themselves for future higher prices, and we do see that actually just this week from the latest data that was released yesterday by the CFTC. If I just isolate the longs and the shorts, and here you will see we actually just went net long on silver, and those of you who are familiar with COT data, you know that that's only ever actually happened once before in silver. It was actually just here, just last year. We went net long in silver before we began that rally towards year end, and that's the only other time we've actually went net long. And we know we've seen that an accumulation of buying coming in through here by the commercials, so there's certainly a buying interest at this level, which supports the potential of that seasonal rally. Another market that we've just mentioned is copper as well, and we've seen like silver, we've seen an increase of commercial buying in recent weeks as we approach those levels. So just isolate the longs again. The long getting to the area that you'd expect to see a market begin to rally from. So I think there's certainly more potential for further buying, and I think there's potential for a little bit further downside in these markets. So we're going to go over now and take a look at the charts to identify where and when potentially we could be a buyer of. Start with copper. Looking at the chart, I was just zoom out a little bit section here. We see this what would potentially be a big inverted, big head and shoulder pattern, potentially on the weekly. Nice little level of support in through here. So it's potential. We're looking maybe for a bounce around this area on copper, taking it back up towards the 2.829 potentially even area till we get up into around these zones. We'll be watching very closely, but again, there's no rush in this. Typically, it's around the middle of the month. We've got a week, 10 days potentially before we're getting into the window. Could come a little bit earlier, but we'd certainly like it to be a little bit lower to possibly be a buyer in this market. There may even be a little bit of another level just coming off them previous lows around here, which you could possibly get to. But I like the sort of longer term trend line that we have in through here, so that's certainly something I'm going to be looking at. Another market that's right up there on the list, which I mentioned already, is silver. Very similar in terms of copper. We've seen a lot of weakness, and we've known with the seasonal pattern we have seen that weakness. There's a couple of options. There is again a very similar level, a bit further away than what we've just seen in copper. Which is zoom out, you'll see that sort of the wedge that silver has been forming, this long-term wedge that we've got in this area here, and coming off. So it's a nice level of support. It's a fair bit off that yet. And judging where we're at, potentially, I'm not sure if we've got enough legs to actually get to this. So that'll be a really nice place to be a buyer. It'll be a perfect place to get your stop loss below, but I'm not sure if silver has the legs in it really to get to that zone from where we're at. So the next possible entry is looking for a trend line break, looking for a change of trend, see momentum changing here. We also see the price action already starting to look a little bit more bullish, stronger buying coming in here. So we can break through this area and looking for trend continuation, possibly a retest back into the trend line for a move higher. That would be an option. So I think that's probably option A, rather than seeing us move down into this level. I think it's a little bit far away. So we'll break through that trend line and looking for a retest of the trend line for a move back up towards the highs or the upper wedge resistance. Mentioned palladium, not particularly of interest given the rally that's already have. I'm not sure there's much left in it. Platinum, however, there is certainly a potential. I would expect it still to underperform mainly the other metals, so it's not at the top of my list, but it may present us with a really nice entry. Similar again, it's approaching levels of support. There's a huge, really significant level. I have to zoom quite a bit out to see the actual history in platinum here. Big level going back all the way back into the early 2000s. Big level of support. So certainly if we were able to get to that area, that is where a zone I'd be really interested in platinum. If we could get to that, there's a softer level that we just see a little bit higher that we're approaching. Not particularly interested in that. I think I'd prefer to be a buyer of likes of silver and copper and gold if we were in those zones. But certainly if we were able to get to this zone in platinum, that is something I would be interested in. It's a big strong historical level, an ideal level to get your stop losses below and be under protection, and a bounce from there would be very probable. So that's something that I would be interested in if we get to that zone. If it's a softer bounce from potentially this level, to say I'd have preference to look at gold, copper or silver. And lastly, I'll just mention gold. The seasonal pattern, as I said, looking there already, isn't typically as strong. In this earlier into the summer, typically comes towards June and or August and September. But looking at the price action, gold has definitely been the strongest market in this sector. It's actually just behind palladium. But we've already seen a big strong breakout. We're looking at the areas that we've been, the sort of the wedge formation that we've been in here. We've seen a strong breakout just on Friday and Friday's price action. So potentially, is what we're saying, we could see a market move up and actually make a higher low that would fit its typical seasonal pattern for the end of July for a run then through into August and September. So that'll be a real nice area. So like we see, potentially we see a move higher now and then a retracement in July to give us that potentially that higher low. So rather than trying to pick the ultimate low, obviously that we can't get in this market, we could be looking for the next higher low, which would be an ideal scenario for that August-September rally. So there are a few really interesting markets. The sector's looking interesting on the whole. We do see a very strong seasonal tendency for the metals industry to perform well at this part of the year. We're seeing gold already starting to outperform, possibly leading that the rest are going to follow. So a few levels on those key markets, the likes of silver and copper, and potentially platinum to might be aware of. Silver is very much high up the list because of what we're seeing in the commercial and equipment and traders data as well. But gold will be in here, and we're simply looking for a trend continuation run. We're going to see a very much a correlated move across the sector. So looking to be a buyer of one or potentially ideally even two of these markets, the strongest performing. We're just at the beginning of June, so not looking to particularly be aggressive just yet. Well, ideally like to see, we may see these markets move a little bit lower. But if we get in through the sort of second, third week of June, it's certainly looking to be a buyer of these markets. If you want to know a little bit more, make sure you subscribe to the videos that we watch, or by all means join me on our weekly webinar service on MMC TV. I'll be going through these markets and a lot more in detail, potentially even talk about some of the ETFs, a way we can buy in and invest through the summer potentially, and try to hold these for September. So I'll be going through that and many other markets, and I do that every Monday night. I'll go through them a lot more detail, along with Forex and indices as well. Okay, thanks very much guys for watching, and I'll be back again next month.